Evening. Welcome to the Town of Ayer Finance Committee meeting on Thursday, November 20th at 6 p.m. in the Ayer Town Hall. This is a hybrid meeting. This meeting of the Finance Committee will be held in person at the location provided on this notice. Members of the public are welcome to attend this in-person meeting. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation via Zoom is being provided as a courtesy to the public, the meeting hearing will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless otherwise required by law. Members of the public with particular interest in a specific item on this agenda should make plans for in-person versus virtual attendance accordingly. This meeting will be live on Zoom. The public may access the proceedings by joining Zoom meeting ID 978-772-8220 or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220, extension 100, prior to the meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. So, how's everyone this evening?
Good.
Great.
Peachy.
You're toasty.
Yeah, it's cold out.
Okay, first item on the agenda is to look at minutes from September 10th and October 16th. Thank you, Eric, for preparing these.
My pleasure.
Better you than I.
I didn't look at the October minutes yet. Sorry.
Take a minute to.
I sent them so early, though.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve the September 10th minutes.
Okay. Second. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the meeting minutes for September 10th are approved. Move to the next meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the October 16th minutes.
Okay. I will second that.
All in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is the town manager presentation about the FY 2027 budget. Okay, welcome, Mr. Pontreviant.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Finance Committee, good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm going to give a brief presentation, and I believe Barbara, you want to? Barbara Tierney, the Finance Manager, is also here, who has been a wealth of great information in putting this together. So I want to give a brief presentation to the Finance Committee, which is based off of one that I recently did for the Select Board on November 5th, and in part when I had a mandatory meeting with all of the department heads on November 12th. And I'm titling it, and I sent this to the FinCom in advance, Weathering the Perfect Storm, and that's based off of which I sent to all of you, and it'll be on the website, a recent report that was just done by the MMA titled A Perfect Storm, where they look at cities and towns facing historic fiscal pressures. And what we're going to just walk through briefly is this perfect storm is what's happened very quickly as we look to FY27 is there are financial and budgetary forces on the federal, state, and local level that are coming together at a time that is going to necessitate that we be proactive. We're always conservative with our budgeting, but that we be proactive and take a little bit different approach with the budget directive on December 1st as we move forward. I just want to point out as you know, the picture of a hurricane, though it's the perfect storm, it's always calm in the eye of the storm, and I'd like to think that Ayer is the eye of the storm as we work together on this. So, what constitutes, briefly, when we say the perfect storm based on the report and what we're looking at? So, on the federal level, all you have to do is turn on the news, and it's not meant to be a political or a partisan statement, but there's unprecedented and ongoing volatility on the federal level. The federal government was recently in a shutdown. There's ongoing instability on that level. Economic impacts on tariffs. We're recently just starting to see the DPW is one department where we're seeing tariff surcharges on certain materials and equipment. Not huge amounts, but as the DPW director has said to Barbara and I, again, something that we didn't budget for, but how long, will that trend be? Lingering inflation, and then the unknown status for federal grants, and that's really going to play out on the schools, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then, of course, all things trickle down, as they say. On the state level, there are rising costs across the board, sluggish state aid on the state level. The good news is on the omnibus, on the town side, we're not heavily reliant on state aid. However, the schools, again, whether it's Chapter 70 or other state funding, is of a concern. Loss of federal grants and aid, as you've seen play out. The federal government has frozen certain grants to Massachusetts. We'll talk about that as it plays out to the schools. Decreased state aid, and there's an ongoing statewide healthcare crisis. The cost of health insurance, which we're going to talk a little bit about tonight, which is a major driver. For instance, the General Insurance Commission, the GIC, we just learned is running, I think, at about a $290 million, yeah, thank you, $290 million in the red. That's a state's problem, but you can imagine where state resources are going to go. And then this perfect storm, any city or town, I think, in America, it's hanging in some form, but in Ayer specifically, one of the things, and we've talked about this before, is the sustainability of the omnibus budget increases. So on average, over the last 10 years, we've increased the omnibus budget by 5.2%. Over the long term, ideally, that's not, we want to get that lower. And as I pointed out, if you look at over the last 10 years, we've increased the omnibus budget by about $8 million. Health insurance. This is the concerning area, not just for Ayer, but across the board. We're being told at this point to prepare for at least a 20% increase in health insurance. And we'll get to that in another slide in a moment. Just as the committee should be aware, we generally get the insurance rate for our active plans in February, the end of February. We get the retirees in January, and the retirees did come in at 20%. So we're concerned if based on historical trends, we'll get into that. But that's definitely a budget driver, not only here, but at the schools. The debt service on capital projects we'll talk about. This is all of the previous approved capital projects, not including the senior center. We'll get into that, but debt service. The closure of the Neshoba Valley Medical Center does have impacts in the sense that it was assessed at $18 million as an operational hospital. Now it is vacant. We are anticipating that the assessment could cut in half to about $9 million, which would translate into about the loss of $250,000 in revenue, tax revenue, and how that spreads out. But the closure of the hospital is a concern. Ongoing stress on the emergency response system in light of the hospitals being closed. I know the FinCom will be meeting with Chief Johnston in the near future, and he has good data on that and what we're looking at there. And then the very sensitive to what I would call taxpayer/voter fatigue, but really taxpayer fatigue. Every single person around this table everybody is feeling some form of these pressures. And as I ask Barbara all the time how collections are, if people can't, pay their taxes, and we're not seeing that at this point, but we want to be sensitive to the fact we've got to tighten down on the hatch. So despite this perfect storm, our challenge and opportunity this year is to continue to provide the highest level of municipal services with a responsible and sustainable budget. So let's drill it down just a little bit more. This is a preliminary overview, so these numbers are based as of November 12th. As the FinCom knows, the budget is a process. There's a lot of variables and moving. So we're going to talk about general numbers as of today and in concept. So the omnibus budget, FY26, it was $20 million without the schools. It's actually $20,024,000, as you can see. Last year, as we talked about, there was a 5.9% increase. Part of that was the end of the SAFER grant and some of the other variables. So remember I said earlier, we really want to get that increase start to move the other way. The average was 5.2%. So let's just assume that the omnibus budget, this is just an assumption, increased by 5% for FY27. So that would be $1 million. So now, as highlighted in yellow, the FY27 budget would be $21 million. Well, as it stands today, if we assume a 20% health insurance increase, that would be approximately $500,000 impact to the budget. As I point in the note, the retirees are already going to be going to 20% on January 1st. We can absorb that. That's about a $33,000 increase, which we prepared. We can absorb. The concern is, if it comes in at 20%, that would be a significant impact. The debt service, so that $283,255. This is all of the various borrows in capital projects that have already been authorized. This does not include the senior center. Barbara has calculated using a 4% interest with various borrow lengths. We are already actively working on that number when we talk about capital. So Barbara and I are meeting with all of the departments on capital. The first capital planning meeting will be on December 10th with the committee, but we're already meeting to find out if there are some FY26 projects and so forth that we can reduce that number. So that is definitely going to be a variable that we're trying to get down. The union contract obligations. So these are all of our existing obligations with contracts. Total townwide is approximately $200,000 for FY27. All the non-union contractual obligations is about $125,000. And then fixed operating costs. I have yet to find a true fixed cost that stays fixed, but like utilities, other insurance, transportation, those we have yet to fully determine. And then the Ayer Shirley Regional School District assessment and the Neshoba Valley Tech School assessment also to be determined. And Dr. Renda has already reached out, as the chair of the FinCom knows, was at one of the meetings, and I did send to the FinCom his sheet. They are concerned. They have the same health insurance we do, so they're concerned on that increase on a larger scale. Some of their entitlement grants that are federal grants are being impacted by what I mentioned earlier, whether interruptions in the government or being frozen, and their transportation costs. And we're going to have to, I think, collectively, the select board and the FinCom from Ayer, along with your counterparts, and Shirley, the school committee, Barbara and I, we're going to have to work together on this. And then the Neshoba Valley Tech School assessment, if you remember last year, we had a decrease in students, so there was actually a decrease. We're hearing from them, and we'll know in January. I think we have an increase of 4 students, so there'll be a slight increase. Again, not anything that we can't absorb, but when you add everything together. So that's sort of just a snapshot of that. That's a picture of me, by the way, looking at the aurora borealis last week with my telescope. I'm trying to keep it light, All right.
Is it really?
No, I did see it. No. All right, good. All right, just trying to. All right, so let's FY27. Let's drill it down a little bit more. These are assumptions right now, and is it a worst case scenario? So again, back to what I said. Let's assume a $20 million budget. Assume a 5% increase, so we're at 21 million. Then the potential drivers, as we mentioned, the health insurance. Now right now we're planning for worst case scenario 20%. We're hoping we won't know until February for sure on that, as we do any year. The debt service that we just talked about, and we're actively looking to mitigate that number some, through either completed capital projects, existing capital. The union contract obligations, again, that's an estimate, and the non-union as well. So then on the fixed operating costs, so in talking to Chuck, facilities director, on the energy fuel front right now, we're looking at an assumption of a 10% increase, which would be 250,000. And on the other insurances, not the health insurance, but all of our other various insurances, about a 350,000. But we're as a placeholder, about 75,000 increase on fixed operating costs right now. We're actively working on that, which at this point in the process, we don't have all of that information. So then let's look at the Ayer Shirley Regional Schools. Now, as the FinCom knows, they are generally come down in February with their assessment to us. But we, as I've said to the superintendent and to my counterpart, Shirley, we have to be proactive this year. Let's just assume, for the sake of this model, a 5% increase, just like a 5% increase on the omnibus. Now, note, as you can see, in FY 26, so if we take the FY26 amount plus 5%, the impact, the assessment would be about $765,174. The average increase has been slightly north of 6% from Ayer Shirley. And so that's a big number, and that's a conservative just for our discussion. And then Neshoba Tech, as I mentioned, let's assume 4 students, FY26, the total assessment was 936. We assume about $1 million, so there'd be about another 63,000. So the total projected increases would be just over 2 million. Remember, if we have a 5% increase of $1 million, that would, as highlighted on the bottom, has an estimated projected shortfall of just over $1 million. That's assuming we would need to have some budget cuts or adjustments. Yes.
This feels like the most likely scenario, not the worst case scenario, right? Because you didn't even account for a higher than insurance rate, which is going to be at least 20%. And the average for the Ayer Shirley was 6%, and you estimated 5%.
Yep.
So to me, this looks like if we get away with these numbers, that we'd be doing pretty well.
I don't disagree, and we have a lot of work to do in agreed. So, I just wanted to bring this up quickly. This is from the town's financial policies, page 4, of what a responsible and sustainable budget is. One is to provide full value to the Ayer residents and businesses, delivering quality services on a cost-effective basis. Preserve the town's quality of life by maintaining financial resources to sustain a sufficient level of services. Number 3, allow responses to changes in the economy, which we're seeing now. We're going to talk about that in a minute because we do have a lot of potential reserves and other tools to consider. And then to provide a roadmap for the future. So just sort of bringing us back to right there on page 4 of the financial policies. So this is my perspective as the town manager as of right now, and I shared this with the department heads when I met with them on November 12th. Our first goal is to preserve and maintain the current quality and level of municipal services. That's our number one goal. Additionally, to preserve and maintain our fiscal reserves. We have built over the last decade a lot of reserves, which we'll talk about in just a second. And town meeting has committed some of those recently to a project that we want to, restore those as well. So we want to maintain that. We want to develop an FY27 budget that has minimal reductions and ideally no reductions in personnel. That is, the reduction of personnel is the last, which I'll show in a minute, last scenario, is the worst case scenario for any organization. Proactively develop the FY27 budget to weather this storm. Identify any budgetary savings and efficiencies that can translate into taxpayer savings, and then develop a viable Ayer Shirley Regional School assessment that can pass town meeting in Ayer and Shirley. And I think this is where we're all going to have to work collectively towards that goal, because the reality is this: if the assessment can't pass Ayer or Shirley by July 1st, then the Department of Revenue requires the school district to go to a 1/12 budget where they can only spend on a month-to-month basis based on the previous year amount. Well, the towns and the district still have to work towards getting it through town meeting. It could be a giant mess. So the goal is, and the challenge is, as we know, Shirley's capacity is not the same as Ayer's in this, is we need to find a solution on that front. And then we want to position the town for a sustainable budget, not only for now, but for FY28 and beyond. So that's sort of my take as of today. FinCom and others may have, and Select Board may have other goals and perspectives which are important. So how are we going to weather this storm? I've got my umbrella up there. So one of the things is we are in a strong position with a lot of reserves and fiscal strength that a lot of our peer towns do not have. Last year alone, Ayer and Littleton were the only two communities in the Neshoba Valley and Shirley that did not require some kind of tax override effort or some override situation. Some of them are still trying to work to resolve that. So the first item is the unused tax levy capacity. We have just over 4 million as of November 5th in unused tax levy capacity. What does that mean? Unfortunately, we don't have $4.2 million in a vault. At least you don't, right, Barbara? But what it means is we do not tax to the max, and we're not advocating that we could go up another 4.2 million without having to go to an override. Correct. We are not advocating override tonight. We are not looking to tax to the max, but I just put some communities have no levy capacity. They're at the limit.
Robert, just another point of clarification on that. So for myself, and I'm sure others, the idea is that because of the budget crunch or possibility, taxes may go up. True, or possibly. And what this unused tax levy refers to is the fact that you can only raise taxes so much until you run into the 2.5
Correct.
Rule. Right. So in other words, what all this refers to is the fact that we have room to raise taxes without having to go to a 2.5 override.
Exactly. And just to stress again, nobody's advocating that we run that limit. We're trying to do the opposite. And number two, advocating for any type of override.
No.
Yeah, but you're correct.
I just wanted to clarify because it just, people, see unused tax levy, and again, I think you addressed it, oh, we've got this money sitting somewhere.
Right,
No,
yeah,
it's-
because it's, yeah,
It's just,
yeah,
it's really an offshoot of the two and
It's
a half.
money we haven't generated.
Yeah.
That we could.
if we had to generate, yeah. Then the stabilization fund, right now, there's just over 5 million. As the committee knows, that takes a 2/3 vote of town meeting. Capital stabilization fund, just over 6 million, and this assumes the 2 million that town meeting authorized for the senior center project. So it was at 8.1, it's now at 6.1. And again, this would, capital stabilization require 2/3 vote of town meeting. The UDAG balance at 2.1 million, that assumes the 1 million that the select board authorized towards the senior center project. It was at 3.1. We take good news when we can get good news. So under free cash, as the FinCom knows, we just got the certification yesterday, which I sent to you November 19th. The general fund certified free cash was just over 2.9 million. And as you see in the note, our 10-year average is about 1.7 million. This year and last year, if you remember, was about 3.2 million. This year and last year were sort of anomalies. And as Barbara has done some initial analysis, one of the things was with interest rates, we realized about a $950,000 interest came in, that
Yep.
revenue. When we dissolved from the Minuteman Neshoba Health Group, there was $310,000 in roll-off costs, money that came to us. The Air Police Department, and I'm pleased to report, and I know the chief's here tonight, is now fully staffed, but the police department was able to turned over about $230,000. And then overall in our health insurance at that time, there's about another $500,000. So it was an anomaly of a year. As was last year, the norm is more about 1 to 1.5. Then the reserve fund, which is under the select board and the FinCom, there's $150,000. There's been no access to that for this year. Our bond rating remains the second highest, which makes us competitive in terms of our borrowing, and also is a testament to the town's financial condition. And then I just put grants and CPC funds with no dollar amount, but the town currently and historically has a strong track record of strategically getting and using grants to try to offset certain things. And the CPC, the strong CPC funds for applicable and eligible projects at a time like this can be a useful tool to have. Again, CPC subject to town meeting and the CPC process. So conservatively, Ayer has over $20 million in financial and budgetary reserves. And tonight, neither I or Barbara, nobody's advocating, a position to use any of these at this point. That's a discussion as we move through the process with the FinCom and the Select Board. Almost done. I appreciate everyone's patience. So what are we going to do so preparing for FY27? So we have been actively reviewing the FY26 budget to identify reductions and savings. We've been, when I say actively doing it, it's a daily thing led by Barbara. We're looking at the 3-year history on every single account within the budget. We're looking, there are some reductions and savings opportunities that we're in the process of not only identifying but quantifying. So when we come back to you, we can look at that in more detail. We've also been meeting with all departments, whether it's on the budget for FY27 or on capital. So what we're asking, and on November 12th when I met with the department, so on December 1st, the budget directive is going to go out. And usually, historically, over the last 10 years or so, we've asked for one sort of scenario. We're actually going to ask for 3 scenarios in preparing for this. So scenario 1 is what we have done almost every year, which is called a level service budget for FY27. The departments take their budget, put in all of the contractual increases, any major items that would be new, they break out, it's to develop a budget to keep the level service. We still want that scenario because that forms the ideal baseline. The second scenario is a level funded scenario. So we basically are going to ask them to take the FY26 amount under the assumption that that's what you have and apply, their contractual increases, and that will identify areas of overage and so forth. The third scenario is going to be to take is a 10% reduction scenario. So they're going to take their FY26 budgets, they're going to add the contractual increases only, and then reduce it by 10%. All of this information is going to guide in the development of draft one of the budget. So we have to take it to that next level. In addition, we'll be actively meeting with the schools in Shirley to form this. December 1st, so the department's on November 12th, given a head start. December 1st, the directive will go out, which the FinCom is copied on. The 29th is when the initial budgets are due, and then we get everything together, and this is per the budget calendar, and then on January 16th, draft one of the budget will be sent to the Select Board and the FinCom and available to the public. So how are we going to make these reductions? So it's going to be a collaborative process based on clear communication. So that's already happening with the town departments. That's why we're here tonight. We've gone to the Select Board, and it's not a one and done thing. Communication's key. We need to prioritize and preserve essential municipal services. And any reductions, when I say equitable across all town departments and services. So the challenge is in municipal budgeting, there's this concept when you get to this called prioritization and equitability. Meaning, of course, yes, you have to prioritize the municipal services, and there's some level, depending on who you talk to, right, of subjectivity there. Somebody could say, well, obviously it's everything that's public safety. Somebody may say something else. So you do have to do the prioritization, but you also have to equitably look at it across the entire municipal operations. Easier said than done, but it's important. Review of spending history, as I mentioned, Barbara's leading that effort. We're doing a 3-year look back on every single line to see the spending history and what folks have turned back. No new programs or services for FY27 that have a direct impact on the omnibus budget at this time. And no new personnel, but in addition to that, we're actively reviewing all of the overtime budgets and history there as well. And at this point, it's very important, I believe, for the department heads to be the lead on those reductions. They know their departments best. They know these budgets best. So initially, we're providing the general guidance. We want them to put the lead on that.
A question on these, how the budget reductions. So on capital planning, I know any of the items that the capital planning committee is going to look at and possibly approve, those are things, isn't there a cutoff on how much, 100,000 is it?
Yeah, so on the capital, first of all, anything that's a one-time expense of 10,000 or more is technically capital. And then to your point, Mr. Chair, generally, anything that's under 50,000, we have tried to pay for right out of capital stabilization, the small items.
Okay, right.
Anything over 50,000, because we would normally borrow, Barbara would borrow for that. Anything over $500,000 requires a debt exclusion. So right now we're working in advance for the December 10th meeting on the capital front. But we're going to have to take a very conservative approach to capital.
So, but I guess what I'm what I was trying to
Yeah.
think through was that as much as it might, okay, we're going to, no new trucks this year, boom. And that is not going to necessarily immediately affect this budget.
Correct. So two things. One is town meeting has authorized $2 million from capital stabilization already, right out of the bat. So we don't want the amount of items that we that we pay for directly is going to need to be minimized. Barbara's concern, and I share it, is moving forward is specifically on the general fund borrowing. The enterprise funds, not that it isn't important because it affects the rates, but on the general fund borrowing, that number, the 282,000, we wanted to get that debt service number. Where was I? That right here, this 283, right? That we need to. We have accomplished a lot, the town, not over the last 10 years on the capital front, and we have to. We can do anything, but we can't do everything. So to your point, a lot of it's being proactive for FY28. But we are looking for, Barbara has been identifying, there are projects that have been completed, that there's, some slight funding remaining, and so forth. Anything that we can put back into capital stabilization or use to reduce that debt service number will help us.
Okay.
But yes, Mr. Chair, it's a good point that a lot of, on the capital front, is looking towards next year.
And I just want to point out that, yes, any capital approved for fiscal 27 won't affect the fiscal 27 budget. But even though we're focused on fiscal 27, we still want to think further out, at least 3 years,
yeah.
for how it's going to affect us. So we're still trying to tighten down on future as well.
Yeah.
As current.
I would appreciate that. That would be great.
Yes.
Not just you, Barbara. No.
Yeah. So then, lastly, sort of just in next steps moving forward. So we're already in November. We only have one union contract. The Town Hall Clerical Union is the only contract up this year. Last year was a big year in terms of those. But those negotiations are about to start. As I mentioned, Barbara and I are meeting with all of the town departments on both budget and capital. And that's going to be ongoing. On November 12th, I had a meeting of all of the town departments to prepare them for this. So on November 18th, just 2 nights ago, Select Board had the tax classification and the transfer station rate hearing. Tonight, we're meeting, November 20th, looking to December. So on December 1st, the actual directive will go out, but departments are already working on it. FinCom will be on that. December 10th will be the first capital planning committee meeting at 5 p.m. And December 29th, all of the initial budgets are due back with those scenarios. And then on January 16th, which is a Friday, by then, draft one of the budget will be transmitted to the FinCom, the Select Board, and will be available to the public. And I thank you for all of the time that is the committee, Mr. Chair, and if there's any questions for Barbara or I'd be happy to answer them. And we're always available too, even after the meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Barbara.
I have a couple questions if anyone else wants to go first.
Please.
Sure.
So the free cash flow that say we 2.9, which I don't know if then that means because we had authorized, or the plan was to put like $2 million into capital stabilization to then withdraw it for essentially for the senior center. So those numbers you showed, is the $5 million in capital stabilization before we've essentially put the $2 million from that free cash flow in there?
Yeah, so I think what you're thinking of is the free cash that we allotted last year. We had put $2 million into capital stabilization. And then, coincidentally, we allotted $2 million to come out for the senior center recently. And now we're at the point of, this is our most recent free cash where we will make a plan on how to distribute it at Springtown meeting.
So this one has nothing to do with. the
They're all
other.
separate
Okay,
things that have happened over the last few years. So this 2.9 million just got certified, which is what we will address at the Springtown meeting in 2026.
So theoretically, can the town just be like, hey, we have just around $3 million in free cash. We're just using that for sort of like estimated taxes. If you overpay 1 year, you just say, yeah, just put it towards my next year's taxes. Can we just say that $3 million goes towards our FY27 budget?
So you can, but it is very, very frowned upon. It would be detrimental to our bond rating. It would not be looked upon as well. And it's kind of a circling of the drain scenario as far as how the DOR looks at it, and Moody's and S&P. So what they recommend is you put things into these stabilization funds, and then you would use out of the stabilization funds if there was something needed for your budget.
So, Eric, just to keep looking at that point, I think I'm going to ask Robert for some help on this. So, Robert, I believe at one of our meetings in January, February, we will look at this 2.9 in free cash and make recommendations how it should be. So we'll say, take that 2.9 and say, put some towards capital stabilization. We did this last year.
Yep, so exactly. So Barbara and I will be coming back to you in the very near future. We'll see a lot of each other. With that amount, it's ultimately between you and the select board and then town meeting approval. But we use recommendations on the uses of that free cash. And just to Eric's question, which Barbara's correct. However, that 2.9 million is ultimately subject to town meeting approval, how it's appropriated. Could it be used towards the budget? That would be like what I call Barbara mentioned, the nuclear option. So what I'm getting at is the Department of Revenue really frowns upon that, as Barbara said. If we were, and we're not there, and we're not anticipating to be there in a scorched earth scenario, could it be used towards the budget? Theoretically and legally, yes, subject to town meeting, but we don't want to touch that. But I'm glad you brought that up, because I think many folks are going to ask that. Also, my opinion, and I'm not speaking for the select board, I'm not speaking for you, but I can, there is no appetite for that money to, some people will say, well, could you put that towards the borrow for the senior center, to reduce the borrow, put that further. Theoretically and legally, again, subject to the whole process in town meeting, but my position on that is that those decisions have been made. This needs to be for the future.
So tied into that, we have the capital stabilization fund, and we also have debt that we borrowed on for capital. Can you take money out of capital stabilization essentially to pay for the debt service? Like, hey, we owe $1 million. You can't do that. That's good.
These are all good questions.
They're very good questions.
Yeah, and when she says that the Department of Revenue, they won't allow it.
Yeah,
That's actually statute. Yeah.
So all of these numbers, don't include the borrowing that's going to happen in April-ish, right?
So the 283,000 is my estimate of an increase in debt for the borrowing I'm going to be doing this in April of 26.
So that is
yeah.
what.
Yeah, but that borrow does not include any borrowing towards the senior center. We don't anticipate needing any yet.
Right, yeah, because it hasn't started yet. Okay, all right, so that's already in there.
Yep, it is. And it's conservative, so I'm whittling away. My plan is to have that number be lower.
My last two, I have two other things that are kind of tied together, and I feel like I'm always a downer at these meetings and whatnot, or negative, but
It's not a party until you arrive. You're
thank you very much. I told
right,
my wife
Bob?
I would and that I don't mean to sound facetious. I really don't. But in order for any of this to work and for people to as I say, continue to just pay regular bills and live. I think people have to be willing to say no to something, or no, you're not getting that much of an increase, or whatnot. Whether that, and I know capital anything wouldn't necessarily hit 27, but it would hit for 28 or 29, and it's still a knock-on and carry-on effect. Never mind other budgets. I would like it said that I think people seriously need to be able to, not you saying no, I'm not trying to put that all on you, but in
Yeah.
general, with all of the budgets and the, because some costs can't be controlled, like health insurance. Like there's nothing
Right.
we're going to do about that.
Right.
The other things have to be given up, because as you said, we can have a lot of things.
Yeah.
We can't have everything.
So I think that's where the 10% scenario reduction is where we're gonna try to get to see what that looks like. And how we would have to or could say no to certain things through that scenario. I'm sorry if I'm over speaking, but that's how I'm
No, you're doing great.
envisioning that.
So,
Doing
Thank you.
exactly that.
yeah, and on November 12th, all of the departments were in attendance. It was similar to what we talked about tonight, and they get it, and that's a testament to them. Meaning, what I'm getting at is we have got to tighten down the hatch on all of these things on the omnibus budget. So we have got to get this FY27 omnibus budget to, it can't keep going above 5%. We've got to get that down the other way. Taxpayers, I think, are at the limit. My own observation, when I mentioned earlier when I said fatigue, the schools is a piece of it, and the superintendent, he knows this, and I hope his people know this, that we all are going to have to do our part. To your point, we've got to get this because of this storm, which we're going to weather. But these drivers, you're correct. We have done a lot, and we're going to continue to do a lot. But we're going to have to tighten up. And as Barbara and I, one of the themes we're seeing is it's going to be, it's not just FY27. We're going to take it one day at a time. But we have concerns about FY28. In 29, that's why we're setting the stage. And you're absolutely right, like on the capital front. I mean, we've already started, and departments have been very cooperative, as they always are. So your points are well taken.
I got a point for you.
Sure.
If for the capital thing, right, instead of paying down debt, for future borrowing, you could just take more out of stabilization and dump more money in there, so you're not borrowing in the future. But you're not paying against your debt, but you could just you could borrow less.
Accomplishing the goal, but doing it in a way that the state
Allows.
allows.
I mean, I hate paying interest.
Yeah, so I mean, historically, if you don't mind, may I, Chair?
Oh, yes, please, yes.
We've kept towards procurement good policies and thresholds for how which is what we've turned into a procedure for using capital stabilization. But as with the executive bylaw goes through its financial policies, and as we go through this, we certainly could look at various scenarios.
I mean, there aren't too many things over 500,000.
Seems like there's always a lot of things over 500.
No, I mean like there's a lot of individual things, right? But if we raise the threshold from 50,000 up to 500,000, that would cover a
to
lot more.
500,000?
Yeah, that would cover a lot more.
Well,
I'm not saying we do that.
yeah.
I'm just saying there's some leeway.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's what I was sort of thinking. So in other words, another way of saying that would be, some of this stuff, capital stuff that we would go to borrow on this year, we would just take care of it through stabilization.
Yeah, you need 150K, sure. Whatever, putting $2 million in there from free cash, we'll figure it out.
I mean, again, this is all just.
How much can a
discussion.
culvert be, right?
How that
Apparently
comes
a
about will
lot.
be something the capital committee will
Yeah.
start to discuss, but
Yeah.
I understand what you're
Capital
saying.
brethren.
And I didn't put this up on reserves, and I should. So we actually, right now, it's probably more like 22 million. The town is part of a class action lawsuit involving PFAS contamination. And we have received, which Barbara has in the appropriate fund, we have received $2 million in settlement funds. Now, the money has to be used for PFAS related. We've already met with the DPW director and the water and sewer superintendent. There is an opportunity there. Now, granted, it's the Water Enterprise Fund, but the good news is it will provide relief is our goal on the water rates. So that's when I say when we're trying to leverage things. Yeah.
I was pointing at you, Bob. So, one thing that I've been thinking of, and in our December, that we just had the rate review and just for the transfer station, and there was minimal increases on that. I mean, relatively.
Yeah.
So I had already been thinking ahead of, because it hasn't shown up on my bill yet. I don't know if it's shown up on anybody else's bill. The storm sewer, or your sewer bill now has water, sewer, and storm.
Latest enterprise fund.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think it was on there. No.
Yeah, so thinking ahead was, I was thinking the rate review committee is next going to look at water and sewer. And one of the big drivers for the water increases have always been that PFAS.
Immediate change.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, right.
And
Yeah,
that's one of the areas.
I
so.
think it's 250,000 for one media.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
From one of the
$250,000.
Yeah.
So from what you're saying, hopefully we will be able to start looking over the next few months, looking at keep
Yes.
the water and sewer rates flat.
Or minimal.
Minimal increases at all.
Yeah.
So to then go back to the big thing you
Yes.
noted, taxpayer and voter fatigue. So
Yeah.
please start to say we're going to give you some relief.
So we are looking at all avenues, not just tax impact is, I guess, the point that we're looking at
Yeah.
relief that can help so we can minimize rate increases through like that PFAS
mhm.
special revenue.
And there are huge pieces, and we'll put this together, but as the committee can appreciate, when I mentioned under like grants, for example, I mean, huge efforts. If the regional dispatch, for example, under Chief Gill's leadership, the enormous, grant support, solid grant support from state 911 that makes that, possible. Fire, I mean, there isn't a grant that the fire department hasn't. So we're going to look at the whole picture. And I think I didn't put this on any of the slides. I had another slide for the department head. The key thing is we're not going to panic because we're being proactive. We know what we need to do, and we have a lot of resources, and we'll get through this. I believe that 100%. This town, between the finance committee, the select board, all of the department heads, the town meeting, all of our boards and committees, and the schools, it's going to be a tight year. It's that perfect storm.
Bob, were you going to say something?
I've seen it on my bill, the water.
Did you?
The stormwater pop through?
Yeah.
So they bill monthly, although each resident gets a quarterly bill. They do a quarter of the town each
okay.
month. So that's good
Yeah.
to hear because somebody else might have been from last year's month reading. And it's good to see it's coming along.
When did you get your bill?
Full disclosure, my controller handles that. So,
But you saw the bill.
no, I did not see that. She asked the question, what is this?
That was brilliant.
Sounds like she deserves a raise for that.
She's very astute.
We've got
Let's put
the
it this
four
way.
parts of the town. We got Bob downtown. We've got you out by the pond.
That's right.
I'm in the middle, and you're on the Grove side.
You're right. I think you cover all the precincts and all the points.
Gin's between you and me.
She's up in the woods there. She does. She looks back on conservation.
I know. Cool. I have no questions.
All
I have none.
Well,
Good,
thank
thanks.
you all. Appreciate it. Again, as we move forward, we'll be back. We'll be here. We'll keep you informed. Any questions, anything you need, you let us know. And we're off to the races. So thank you. Thank you all.
But if you could
Sure.
may stay a moment, our next item is the calendar review, and I've got some items there. I just thought I would skip ahead to see if there's any public input.
Pauline's online. That's it.
Any, okay, hearing none.
Pauline's got a hand.
Okay.
Go ahead, Pauline.
Thank you, Andrew, because I was waiting for a break in the momentum while Robert and Barbara were still at the table. I don't remember the answer to this question, so Robert, I apologize. Can the free cash 2.9 be used for capital exclusions?
Generally, no, you can't use it to pay debt service.
So Barbara's.
I'm sorry, Barbara, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah.
Generally, no, you can't use free cash to pay for debt service or debt exclusion services.
Okay,
And
that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
And that's per the Department of Revenue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great, thank you, Pauline. Okay, great, thank you, Robert, thank you,
Great.
Barbara,
Good.
Yeah.
time and efforts.
Yep, you're good. Yep, I'm just putting your agenda back.
Okay, so the last thing on our agenda is I put together a draft, schedule for us for the next year. Oh, it's hard looking at this. Well, just putting 2026 in. So what I did is I went back last year and looked at our meeting schedules and when we had, various presentations. So I've put in, so for example, starting January 29th, presentation, town administration, fire department. Robert mentioned something about the Earl Shirley, they'll do a joint presentation, Public Works and Neshoba Police. So in other words, this is all our meetings on the regular first and third of the months, and I've essentially got these penciled in. Now we got to, talk to the police chief and fire chief and DPW to see if they can make these meetings. But I just thought this would be
Good one.
good look forward to what we have to do next year. So the one thing is in January, usually again we meet first and third, so that puts us on January 1st, so we don't do that. So I added a meeting on the 29th, so if that's,
By me.
okay, so, all right, so that'll be sort of out of the ordinary, okay, so that's, and then the other thing was, so for December, we have December 4th and 18th, and I thought we still should have a meeting for the 4th, and we can just follow up on today's presentations, maybe get an update on, update a review, or start looking at rate review, capital planning, any other financial things.
I have
that are-
one suggestion.
Yes.
The financial policies. Because Robert had mentioned, and I haven't read the policies in whatever since the 3.5 years ago when I first got on the committee, and one was the cap stabilization was supposed to be some percent of the omnibus, so which came out to be like 200 grand
Yeah.
or
Oh,
something.
really?
There's
Okay.
8 million in there, and it's like that. We should really take a minute to look at that.
So for December 4th, put down review financial, FinCom policies or financial?
Financial policies. I
Financial.
think we'll have to be specific, so maybe you and I can get together and talk about which one we want to talk about.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of policies. I won't be here on the 18th meeting, so
Well, I was just going to probably say that's a holiday. I mean,
works for me.
So we're not going to meet on the 18th? Or is
well,
it-
unless anybody really wants to.
No, I just.
Yeah, I mean, I think we sort of take a breather here because then we're going to be pretty busy in this spring and summer.
Fine by me.
Spring and, oh my God, I'm already into summer. So winter and summer. Okay, so we'll meet December 4th, get review on again, updates on rate review and capital planning
I'll email you some suggestions this weekend.
on the financial policy.
You can pick your favorites, and then we'll send it out to everyone.
for the financial policies. Okay. Okay, good stuff. All right, anything else?
I have nothing.
Oh, Jen can join us for the, you're just in time,
Jen, I'd
Jen.
like to make a motion to adjourn.
I second that. All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.